So the first question is, how do you pronounce this? Because the entire time that I read, obviously this book, but also The Inheritance Cycle, I pronounced it as Murtagh, whereas I've heard some people pronounce it as Murtagh. So for the duration of this video and probably the rest of my life, I'm just going to call it Murtagh because it's been way too late. I didn't even consider there was a different way to pronounce it. So let's start there. So I finished Murtagh. Christopher Paolini finally came back to Allegasia and I really enjoyed it. I'm going to talk about it. There's going to be a ton of spoilers. So if you haven't read this and you're planning to, or if you haven't read this, or if you haven't read The Inheritance Cycle and you're planning to, don't watch this video. Go and read those and then come back. If you have and you want to talk about it, this is the video for you. So what I'm going to be talking about is, did I enjoy this? Yes, I did. What did I enjoy and what did I not like as well? Because there were quite a few things that got on my nerves with this book also. But overall, I did really enjoy it. I hope you did as well, because we waited long enough for it to come out. And from what I remember, this basically, the first couple of chapters are what we get in The Fork, The Witch and the Worm, which leads me to the belief that maybe we're going to get continuations of the other short stories that were in The Fork, The Witch and the Worm as well, which is quite an exciting way to kick off. Immediately, it's got me excited about the future of Allegasia and what could come in this world as well. So, great start. So what did I love from this book? The first and foremost and biggest and best thing from the entire book is simply Murtagh and Thorn. I enjoyed having those two together and seeing the world from their perspective so much. And it's clear that they have a completely different relationship to Eragon and Saphira. Murtagh and Thorn have such a clear understanding of what happened to them. It's affected their lives so aggressively, as it should, right? It was a very traumatic experience and it lasted for a long time as well and really changed them as people and dragon. And they carry it. They're carrying it and it's so heavy upon their shoulders for the duration of this book, and obviously for the duration of what happens in the Inheritance Cycle after he's captured in Farvandur and Thorn hatches for him. And that's like the first thing we see, is that I know instantly this book is going to be about trying to overcome that for them, and it's going to be a difficult journey. Also, their relationship is different from Eragon and Saphira's in a lot of other ways as well. Thorn is quite subservient to Murtagh, I think. And Saphira was, I believe, much more dominant in the relationship between Eragon and Saphira. And here's my thinking as to why. Saphira really was a free and wild dragon when she hatched for Eragon. They were actually out in the wild. She had the upper hand. Her instincts helped out. She quickly grew to be not the parent, but like the older sister in the relationship. Saved Eragon multiple times from multiple assailants. Yeah, she was the older sister. Whereas Thorn was essentially bred in captivity. We learn a lot more about their past, and I'm going to go into that later, and it's heartbreaking, but we learn about Thorn's birth, his first few days, the types of things that happened to him. We learn about the wolves in the pit, and he really doesn't get that sense of independence, I don't think, and give off that sense of strong independence that Saphira does, just because of what their first, I don't know, like 6 months, even a couple of months to a year looked like in their life. Saphira really was a wild dragon, kind of chosen this kid and ended up looking after him a lot and being lent on, whereas Thorn was born and was instantly a captive of a human and I don't feel like he really understands his role in the world as a dragon, and therefore is quite subservient to Murtagh. And that was a huge difference between the two pairs of protagonists across these two different books. Also, their stories are obviously completely different. Saphira and Eragon are learning the entire time. They have this clear goal that they're working towards and what they need to achieve, even though it is huge and distant and impossible. But they're learning, they're growing to know each other. They have people around them supporting them, wanting them to do better. Murtagh and Thorn, at the start of this book, we see that they're unlearning. You know, the big ordeal is actually behind them. And now they need to unlearn everything that happened, unlearn the lessons that they were forced to learn, unfortunately. So yeah, Aragorn and Saphira were learning the entire time, and Murtagh and Thorn were completely unlearning the entire time, and it's a strange juxtaposition, but I really enjoyed it. So, and I felt overall this book between Murtagh and Thorn was about facing your fears, tackling them head on, facing your demons, learning to lean on each other and other people as well, finally, because they shut them out. And then finally, again, learning how to trust as well. And I think that was what this was all about. It was essentially like a healing journey and undoing and unlearning some of the terrible things that they'd learned in the past. The second thing I love was simply the blasts from the past. We got things like Razak eggs. It was cool to see the grave of Gladir and see that involved. We got Durza popping in and out of the story, Galbatorix. We also had Morzan as well, and a ton of other characters popping in and out. So we got some blasts from the past, and it just basically got me nostalgic of being a kid and reading the Inheritance cycle again. We also get a look behind the curtain of some of those characters as well. So we learn a lot more about what happened to Galbatorix when his dragon died. Obviously, he goes and meets with Bashel unintentionally, but that's what happens. And initially, I thought the story was being cheapened. I thought Galbatorix's reign was being cheapened. Now, obviously, he can't be all-powerful at all times, and this was very young in his life. But I thought what Paolini was alluding to originally was that Bashel really was controlling Galbatorix. But as the story unfolded, it was more she just nudged him in the direction that he ended up going anyway. I don't like the idea that Bashel had a hold over him or was able to sway him in any way, shape or form. Galbatorix was the big bad baddie. Maybe not as bad as the one that's upcoming, but in human form, he was the pinnacle of not just evil, but also competence when it came down to seeing a goal and achieving a goal. So I'm glad by the end of the story I didn't think that the main villain of the previous 4 books had been cheapened, but it was awesome to see behind Galbatorix's reign, see things from Murtagh and Thorn's perspective, understand the inner workings of his court, how he dealt with people, more about the War of the Riders and how he essentially got rid of them all. Like, we just see so much from behind the curtain, because in Aragorn's perspective and Aragorn's story, that's all happened. And we really don't get anything of the inner workings of the Empire, because it's all about the Varden and Aragorn in particular's journey. So it was so interesting to flesh out this character, which was the main big bag villain, but really we didn't meet very much in the previous cycle. So I loved that. And we also saw some of Paolini's best work, and there were some bits that I absolutely loved. One of my favorite things that Paolini does, and I think a strength of his writing, is journeys. He's always done amazing journeys. Although this one in this book wasn't very long, it was only like a 4-day journey at one point when they realize where Bashel is and they're going to go and travel over there. But there's always like monk-like lessons learned on these journeys. The characters get to know each other better, they get to know themselves better, and we also get to slow down and flesh out the world as well. So Aragorn and Saphira had some really long journeys, and they were some of my favorite parts because the whole world slows down and you get to enjoy Allegazia and the characters rather than it being non-stop pace and action. I also think that the description when it comes to the descent into despair and depression that overcame Thorn and Murtagh during their capture by Bashel was incredible. It had me frustrated, it had me angry, it had me tormented, and honestly I didn't plan on reading for very long that night, and I ended up reading all the way through until when he realizes he's still got the diamond and the Urgle gives him the healing charm, because then I knew, okay, I can see an end, because it was so well written and I felt like I was there with them. And I just, after the explanations of what happened to them at the hands of Galbatorix, and then all of a sudden this perfect explanation of a descent into despair and honestly like depression and numbness for these two feisty characters, like you can't believe they're back there again, like the world feels so unfair. That was darker and maybe better done than any despair that occurs during the inheritance cycle. And I was really feeling it. Like I felt like I was there with them and I wanted them to get out of it and I needed them to get out of it. So that was great writing by Paolini. I really enjoyed that. We also get some more Urgle culture. I can't remember the name of the Urgle, but he's the one that's imprisoned by Bashel as well, and obviously is a big part of them escaping. Becomes kind of blood brothers with Murtagh, and I love Urgle culture. We had that one journey where Aragorn runs on foot with the Cull in the inheritance cycle. I can't remember exactly where it fits in, but I think it's either in Brisinga or the final book. And that's amazing, like when he goes into the Urgle's brain and sees what their world is about, because it's so alien in comparison to ours. The elves were cool, but I don't know, the Urgles, they're so mysterious for most of the time that I love whenever we find out more about them and they're more humanized. So that was really fun. And along with Paolini's best, of course, we get some of his worst as well. Some of his worst, I would say, is that things get very repetitive. And in this one, is the same. So what will happen is they'll reach a settlement or a task or something that needs to be done. Murtagh will go alone. He will have some success, and then he will fail, or he will faint or be knocked unconscious. And then the real task will start, and then eventually Thorn will come and get him, or someone will come and save him. And that was rinsed and repeated throughout the duration of the book until we get to the end, when Thorn obviously overcomes his inability to head down into the tunnel. But I mean, basically the same thing happens again, pretty much. You know, he's on a threadbare, and I just feel like Paolini needs to find a way to develop the characters and show defeat or something, or new trials and new tribulations that don't require our main character to go unconscious. Like, it feels so cheap. And I even got to points where I'm just like, okay, when's he going to go unconscious? So then I can start like really paying attention again, because that's when, you know, we're at a point where I'm not 100% certain as what's going to happen next. Because I knew we're going into any task, he was almost definitely going to be unconscious, because the same thing happened to Aragorn all the time as well. And I know it's young adult fantasy, and I'm no longer a young adult. You know, I really read this as a nostalgic thing. I know that's what it's aimed at, so therefore maybe it's not as complex and the lessons aren't as difficult to learn. You know, being knocked unconscious and then waking back up is something that I thought would happen a lot as a kid, you know, because it's in all young adult fantasy books. But yeah, obviously that wasn't amazing, but you know, and that's voiced a lot about the series. So what's coming next? Well, obviously we have to deal with this humongous dragon. That's what I assume it is. Large enough that its scales are potentially the spine of the world. That's really good. I think that's a really good story. If that's what it is, I may have misinterpreted it, but I doubt it. It seems like that's what it's alluding to. That's a really cool storyline, because that's not something that's easily fixed. It's completely different to Galbatorix, and it probably brings into like play much wider things in this universe than anything we've come into contact with. Like, I don't think anything we've met so far would be able to deal with that. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what comes out next in this series. What has Paolini got for us? But you tell me, what did you enjoy about Murtagh? What did you not enjoy? Did you enjoy it as much as any of the Inheritance Cycle books? I really had a great time reading it, but outside of the finale, I think Aragorn, Eldest and Brisinga were better than this one, but I would definitely put this one above the finale, above Inheritance. And then my favourite character, I wanted to bring this up because it's always a good discussion. From that initial cycle, who was your favourite character? Because mine was Aromas. And when I say this, not many people agree. Almost everyone's favourite character is either Murtagh, randomly, or Angela. Angela is like such a strong favourite. So you tell me, what was your favourite character in the initial cycle? Or maybe it's somebody from this book. What are you looking forward to from the next books that Paolini brings out, and what were your overall thoughts on Murtagh? Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, I've got tons like it on my channel. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you.